Hey, how are you? I'm coming in here today to talk about something that I think a lot of you probably don't want to hear me talk about, which is consistency, and specifically how to create consistency in your business. If you're a free spirit, if you're someone who doesn't like structure and rules and anything that feels too restrictive, I can definitely relate to that. And so I have a strategy that I use myself, and a lot of my clients have found success with as well. So I want to share it with you because it's pretty simple, but it's something that is really effective. And it's a three-part process. So the reason that I'm talking about about consistency in the first place, spoiler alert, is because consistency is something that really, really builds trust with your audience. And I actually think that, being consistent is one of the things that it's like an unsung hero of online success specifically. I don't know about the rest of the business world, but online consistency is something that really creates this high level of trust with your audience. And as we know, having that trust with your audience is the number one thing that leads to sales. So really, finding a way to be consistent is super important for me. And that being said, something that I really hate is any type of rules or any type of commitment that feels a little bit restrictive to me. So even something like saying, hey, I put out videos every Tuesday instantly makes me feel like, oh, so now I owe somebody something. And maybe you can relate to this, maybe you can't. If you can't, then good for you. Maybe you thrive on that type of structure. But for me, it feels a little bit restrictive, but I really want my audience to be nourished every single week with some type of content. And this is where my consistency is, really going to come into play. So I have a three-part process. First part of the process is batching. This is like the foundation. This is so freaking key. If you can batch any of your work, so if your consistency is that you want to post on social like 5 times a week, maybe your consistency is you want to put out a video once a week, maybe you want to put out, send your an email to your list every single week, depending on what it is, all of those can be batched. And this is the thing that really makes a big difference for me. So when I'm in a creative mood, when my, juices are flowing and I'm feeling inspired, I will try to batch as much content as possible. We usually try to do 7 weeks at a time. It's a random number, but it's just kind of what works for us. So I try to figure out, okay, for the next 7 weeks, what videos do I want to put out? And you guys know my content workflow. I have a whole video on that on IGTV. You can check it out. But the way that my content workflow begins is with a video. And then from there, all the rest starts to follow. So I start to think about, all right, can I brainstorm 7 videos right now? And usually you can come up with just 7 video ideas pretty easily. And I really like when they start to kind of flow together. So you might notice last week, one of the steps that I talked about was being consistent as a habit of really high earning entrepreneurs. And so this week I'm talking about consistency. So it allows me to kind of have some of the topics flow together, which I think actually is just an added bonus of doing it this way. So you can come up with 7 ideas. Then I start to break down, okay, in those 7 ideas, what are some of the things that I want to talk about? And then from there, I'll start to write the emails that go along with this video. And then my team kind of takes it from there. But that's how I can get 7 weeks of content ready in usually 1 or 2 hours. And this is really the key, because what I notice is when it says in my calendar, okay, it's the time for you to put out, your content for that week, it's super easy to kind of get maybe writer's block or just sort of hung up. And so you can procrastinate for a little while. So let's say I procrastinated for 30 minutes. I could procrastinate on 30 minutes and then do 1 video, or I can procrastinate for 30 minutes and then do 7. And I find I can usually do it in the exact same time that it would take me to create 1 video. I can do all 7. So I really highly recommend batching. If you're not already doing it, this is nothing new. Just Google time blocking, batching, Pomodoros, all of those things will help you, but try to create a few weeks of content at once. So that's key number 1 to being consistent. Key number 2, what's key number 2? Oh, flexibility. Okay, so this one is really key, especially for free-spirited type entrepreneurs, and that is to not tell anyone your schedule. You can tell your team, but you remember how I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if I say something like, I put out new videos every Tuesday, that instantly makes me feel stressed. It makes me not want to do it. So what I do is I pretty much put out videos here every Tuesday, but I've never told anyone that because sometimes shit happens and a video comes out on Wednesday. I actually think this one will probably come out next on Wednesday. Sometimes it comes out on Thursday, and all of that is fine as long as I'm not breaking a promise or breaking trust with my audience. That's cool. And I don't think anyone would ever notice, except I just outed myself right now. But give yourself that flexibility so that you don't feel like you're behind. Again, I talk about this all the time, but entrepreneurs really love that feeling of momentum. So as soon as you put something in the way that could cause you to feel behind or like you're late for something or like you've screwed up, that's when you start to kind of get demotivated. And that's the opposite of what we want if we want to have really productive work weeks. So give yourself some flexibility, leave some wiggle room in your calendar so that if your video doesn't come out on Tuesday, if you don't film it on Monday and it doesn't come out on Tuesday, can you still get it out on Wednesday? Does all of that still work for you? So leave some room for flexibility there. But then the third tip is kind of, the opposite to that, which is to create some sort of accountability. So this is one that has really, really worked for me, especially in the beginning when I found it a lot harder to like stick to what was in my calendar. I would create some kind of accountability by telling my assistant or just letting somebody know, hey, this video is going to be to you. I'm going to give it to you to work on the socials by Monday morning. And so that person is now waiting on me. And for me, if somebody's waiting on something from me, I'm for sure going to get it to them. I just will make it happen more effortlessly than I will if I've just made that commitment to myself. So maybe that's like I should talk to my therapist about that, but that's something that's really, really worked for me. And so even if you don't have a team, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could kind of create that accountability. Maybe you could even ask a friend like, hey, tomorrow I'm going to post a video. Would you mind reposting? Or like, could you repost it or could you comment on it? And even just asking one person to do that, then you've kind of made that micro commitment to them and said, hey, I'm going to send it to you at this time. And, if your word is your bond, then you're for sure going to get it to them by that time. And so that's something that's sort of a smaller scale piece of accountability that's really worked well for me. And if I get it to, my friend or something by that time, then I'm going to get something out of it, which is that she's going to comment on it. So that's going to be really great for my engagement or something like that. Or if I actually get it to my assistant, then I'm not going to be wasting time and money paying her when I don't have a video ready, right? And so I've kind of created that accountability there that I find works really well. So having accountability, but also flexibility, I think is really something that has worked for somebody who really doesn't like too many structures or restrictions in my week, but it is kind of an overarching guide or an aim. And I know a lot of my clients are doing the same thing. And I think matching this consistency strategy up with a content workflow, which is something where like, okay, every single week I take one video, parts of that video turn into a social media post, parts of that social media post turn into an email, parts of that email turn into Instagram stories, or however your content workflow works, where you kind of take one piece of content and that sort of trickles out into a bunch of smaller pieces of content. Like I said, I do have a whole video on that. That also really helps with consistency because the job itself becomes a lot smaller. So you just have to create one video. You don't have to create one video and, think of everything to write in the email and all of this. They all kind of, they all help the next one, right? So that's my trick. I hope it's helpful. It is fairly simple, but it's something that really, really works for me. So if you give it a shot, let me know because I'd love to hear if you are somebody who really resists consistency, if this works for you. And if you have your own tricks, definitely leave them in the comments because I think anyone watching this video is probably someone who resists that type of thing. And I definitely do. So I want to read all of those comments and I'll chat with you soon.